Meanwhile, back here, Cleco is working to make sure its equipment is ready for hurricane season. The utility says it's conducting its largest grid resiliency investment in the company's history. The 5-year plan will include over 550 projects that will harden grid infrastructure. Now, some of the work being done includes replacing electric equipment, undergrounding certain segments of the system, reinforcing utility poles, and elevating substations above floodplains. Cleco says the work will further strengthen system-wide resilience, reduce storm-related costs, lead to fewer power outages, and faster restoration times.
So we want the grid to be as resilient as possible. Like I said, when a hurricane passes, customers are without lights, customers might have other types of damage. We want them to not worry about when their lights will come back on. If we can even cut that time in half, then this project will be worth it.
A portion of the projects are focused on critical customers like hospitals and emergency services, which are essential during storms or times of crisis.